Hello, friends. Well, today what I want to do is I want to make a video kind of responding to the video that I made before talking about the unseen. So I found out that in this version of the Quran, the English version, the clear Quran, it talks about the unseen, and you can see how it's labeled here. So what I want to read through it and get your perspective on this and see if it makes sense and kind of add my 2 cents in as I always do as I'm trying to gauge through this book and go through it all. So God is the first one. So God is the unseen. Now I believe that you can, I believe in God, and you could see God through the manifestations of his creation. So you look around, and the weird thing about humans is we have this ability to observe. I think that's what makes us special. We have the ability to observe, where all the other animals just seem like creatures that are here to keep everything in order. Like there's a balance between nature and animals. You ever watch The Lion King? The circle of love. That's what I'm talking about, that balance, right? And humans are kind of on the outside of the balance, and we're able to observe it. But that's why we can cause massive amounts of destruction, and we can cause massive amounts of well-being as well. So we have the ability to manipulate our environment, which animals don't have. So that's how you can notice God. The angels, now I don't really understand the definition of angels and really what that means. I know that they don't have free will, but I don't know what their function is. They just do God's commands. Is that what they do? It's like almost like kind of like a stage that God uses, because if God's the absolute, he doesn't need angels, but God doesn't need anything, but yet the angels are still there. Maybe that's just something that we're not supposed to understand. Our mind is limited. That is a fact. Okay, so they have the Jinn. The Jinn was created from fire, where humans were created with clay. And that makes sense. I mean, look at the dirt, right? I mean, you look at the dirt and you figure it out. Like, you kind of look at the ground, you see, like, humans came from the ground, but yet we have consciousness and we're able to observe the ground in which we came from. Fascinating that we come from the earth, but we can also observe the earth. We're like the universe looking into the universe. That's how I see it, at least. Then they have Shaitan, Iblis, and Iblis is the one that didn't want to bow down to Adam, and is supposed to be the human's sworn enemy. So I would assume that would be evil itself. Evil itself is manifested in consciousness, but the consciousness of evil itself that can whisper into the ears of the human. The weird thing is that the soul is a central figure that that is viewing the objective reality, but through our senses we can only see our subjective reality. And since we can only see our subjective reality, we have a limited view of things. So, okay, what does that mean? We can hear, right? But we can also hear our own thoughts. Well, if you can hear your own thoughts, then who's listening? And then who's whispering? So you can have your own thoughts, but you can have evil thoughts. And if you have evil thoughts, is it you that's having those thoughts? What's the Islamic perspective on there? And for any of my Christian friends, what's the Christian perspective on there? What's the religious perspective on the whisperer in your ear? Is it your thoughts? Is it the devil's thoughts? And how can you differentiate between the two? The next would be death. Death is apparently unseen. And it makes sense. I mean, you can't see death, but it's there, and you know that it's there. That's a fascinating perspective. The final hour, which I'm assuming would be the day of judgment, but it doesn't, because there's another day of judgment here. But the final hour, isn't it fascinating though that through generations and generations, we always think that our time is the final hour? But maybe this is to fight off death anxiety, because everybody has a final hour. My final hour could be tomorrow. I could not make a video today. My final hour could be today. Or I could live another 50 years. So you really don't know. It's very strange how you're just observing this world. And you're here, you go to sleep, you wake up, and then you're here again. How did I get here again? The resurrection, and we went over that in the last video. The belief in resurrection seems like a far-off belief if you can't believe that you're here right now. But the argument laid out in Surah Baqarah is we've created you came from nothing. Essentially, we created you out of nothing, and you will resurrect again. So the argument is basically is if God could create you the first time, why can't you die and then be resurrected again? That argument makes sense to me if you're willing to accept that you were created in the first place. And I don't see a different argument. So, and please, if you have a different argument, I'm always willing to listen. The day of judgment, which I haven't really got into yet. Paradise, which I haven't really got into yet, and then hell. Let's see if there's anything else here. Regrets, that's unseen. Regrets, desperate pleas. So this is pleas, begging to return for the world. That's what it says here. Return to the hereafter. The qualities of righteousness, but I feel like you can see that. But I'm guessing they're talking about personality, which is fascinating because actually I want to talk about that. Qualities of the wicked, yeah, major sins. So I'm talking about what I was talking about in my other video regarding the unseen. I was actually talking about personality traits that manifest within people. So and I'm very fascinated with handshakes with the devil. Think back to when you were like 5 and everything was pure and innocent. And as you get older, I know that, I've been thinking about the stages of human beings, and from like 13 to like 24, you're in this exploratory phase where you're just exploring everything. The problem is if you don't have a society that can guide that age, those kind of teenage ages, what happens is you can explore yourself off a cliff. And that's why you can see, at least in Canada and probably the United States, all these teen pregnancies. You see like the jails being packed with young men, 18-year-old men. And I know that when your brain is pretty much fully developed, you have this thing called your prefrontal cortex, the front of your brain, and it's fully developed by the time you're about 25. Now, the reason why I brought this up is, when does most of the corruption happen? Well, if you look at people that are going to jail, if you look at single motherhood, if you look at the things that actually put you in hell while you're on this life. Now, I'm not talking about hellfire. I'm talking about just like pain. The people in jail are in pain. The single mother who doesn't know who the father is in pain. Fundamentally, they're in pain. And of course, the kid that's born without a father, that person's in pain. When do those decisions happen? Those decisions seem to happen when you're in the exploratory phase of your life. So maybe 14 to 24, 13 to 24, somewhere in that range, depending on puberty, like the setup of puberty up until about 23, 24, when you start to gain a little bit more consciousness that's correlated with the development of the brain. Now, during that time, isn't it possible that you're more susceptible to corruption? Like, for example, the legal age of drinking in Canada is 19, but people would go to the clubs and get drunk at 15. But you won't do that at 30. I mean, some people will, but is that a manifestation of the corruption that they went through when they were 14? And then the question is, where does that corruption come from? Is it just the exploratory phase? Or while you are learning about the world in your exploratory phase, is this when the devil, shaitan or demons, I mean, that's the manifestation of it, but evil itself whispers into your mind, telling you to do things that are destructive for you, which makes you weak. And the weaker you are, the more destructive you are for yourself. Yeah. And with that, thanks for listening.